Hello everybody, welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and today we're back with another episode of Aussies Abroad. Now, what this series entails is that we're going to be going through the weekend's results across Europe, across Asia, North America, South America, and taking a look at some of the best performing Australians across those leagues. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. So let's kick things off by the player in the title and thumbnail in this video, and that is Connor Metcalfe. Now, Connor Metcalfe starred in St.Pauli's 1-0 win over Hannover 96 over the weekend. He scored the goal to double their lead very early in the first half, I should say, and it was a fantastically taken goal as well. But before we get into the actual performance, before we get into the way or the game that Connor Metcalfe played, let's touch on who he is as an actual player. Now, if you want a full breakdown on who he is, there is a player spotlight episode already on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel where I go through his full player profile. So head on over to that video if you want a full breakdown of who he is as a player. But giving a brief overview, he is a very interesting player to analyze. I think that is something I definitely mentioned in that episode as well, and because he's almost a multi-dimensional player, he has a lot of very good characteristics, very good traits, but he's been moved around in various different positions across his career. Now, when we look at his time at Melbourne City, he of course was a fantastic player for them, making the move over to Germany at the start of this season, but he was used as almost a box-to-box midfielder in a sense. Now, he was able to play in a double pivot, he was able to play in a midfield three, both as a central midfielder in a midfield three or playing on the outside. Now, this suits his well-rounded game. I think when you think of Connor Metcalfe, you think of a player who can be solid defensively whilst also having a lot of attacking impotence and a lot of ability to impact in the final third, making late runs into the box, or being more of a deep-lying creative player who can dictate tempo and be like the second or third link in a chain moving forward. Now, that's the role that he played at Melbourne City. It was obviously fantastic for them, playing as his more auxiliary type midfielder, this box-to-box midfielder. However, he's moved to St.Pauli and he's been moved in various different positions across his time so far. Of course, his season has been heavily interrupted with a few injuries and also that World Cup break, which he didn't make the squad for Australia to Qatar, which shocked a few. It surprised me in a sense because I think he definitely could have added something to the squad, added a little bit more balance in midfield. But I mean, considering what the Socceroos did, you can't really complain. But when you look at it from a Metcalfe perspective, he was almost expected to make the squad. It would be disappointing for him not to have made the squad, but he has obviously rebounded since the World Cup and has played very well. He went off injured in the game before this for St.Pauli, but he came back in this game and played very well. And he actually started on the right hand side of an attacking front three. Now, the way that St.Pauli played is that they lined up in a 3-4-3 formation, and it was very fluid in a sense because of the way that they obviously like to play. It was very fluid, and it did have two major kind of areas in which you could analyse it in a sense. They did have heavy overloads on the left-hand side. Now, this obviously is the opposite side to what Metcalfe played. Because they had the overloads over that left-hand side, this allowed Metcalfe playing in that right winger, kind of right forward role, to come inside and almost drop a little bit deeper, to play as almost like a number 10, maybe he's almost a very advanced number 8 at times. Now, this does suit his more attacking areas of his game. It's something that we haven't really seen a lot of him in previous times, playing in this more advanced area, playing in these more attacking positions. But he was played in this right hand side of like an attacking front three, and he was given a license to drop slightly deeper and to play as more of an attacking number 8, or as like a number 10 on that right hand side. If we bring up his heat map here, we can see that there isn't a real major kind of talking point that we can like identify in a sense, but we can see the two big spots just in front of the center circle, and also just slightly deeper on that right hand half space in his defensive half. Now, this goes to show that he does have this goes to show two things. First thing is that he was given the license to be slightly more defensively sound and be slightly more defensively minded, dropping deep, being able to play almost like a box-to-box midfielder at times in this game. But he also was given the license to drop slightly more centrally, which was kind of balanced by those overloads on that left-hand side, I should say, that St.Pauli looked to have and look to kind of influence the game via that means. But with this kind of system, or with this kind of heat map, it does go to show the versatility that Connor Metcalfe has, and that is something that we've seen. That is something that we have seen. A few technical difficulties there, apologies, but that is something that we have seen. That versatility is something that we've seen very much at his time at Melbourne City. His ability to play as a box-to-box midfielder, like I've mentioned, and his ability to be very fluid and versatile in his roles, depending on regardless of his position, of his starting position in a sense. He has been very versatile and very fluid within his role, and that is obviously something that obviously St.Pauli looked at and thought that they could get the best out of him, and he's obviously played in this more advanced position, but also dropping slightly deeper at times in his game against Hannover, and he was rewarded with a fantastic goal. It was a brilliantly taken finish. It did go to VAR, but it did count at the end of it, and it gave St.Pauli the 2-0 lead just before the half-hour mark and killed the game off from there. He was a fantastic player alongside his fellow Socceroo Jackson Irvine. Both of them played very well in this game, led St.Pauli to a much needed win against a side higher than them on the table, and this hopefully is something that can kickstart Connor Metcalfe's that can kind of give Connor Metcalfe's career a little bit of a resurgence, because he has been in and out of form. Like I said, didn't make the Socceroos squad for the World Cup, has been in and out of form, struggling with injuries here and there for St. Pauli. He hasn't really been given a clean go at things and a clean run at things in one position where he can really make his own. So hopefully this goal, the confidence that he can get from this performance, can give him the freedom, in a sense, and give him the license to kick on with his career, because we saw at Melbourne City he's a fantastic talent. We've seen in some of the games that he's played for the Socceroos, both at youth level and of course the senior level, his ability, the way that he can influence games as well, both in a defensive sense, in a traditional midfield sense, as well as in an attacking sense. So Connor Metcalfe, hopefully this performance can give him that kind of fire in the belly, in a sense, to revitalise his career, I should say, and give him that extra bit of motivation to crack back into the Socceroos squad, potentially for the Asian Cup, and really become a key central figure for the Socceroos. Obviously seen other players come through that Melbourne City system, the likes of Riley McGree, who have gone leaps and bounds with their career, and has been and are now almost guaranteed starts for the Socceroos side based on how well Riley McGree is playing. So hopefully something similar can happen with Connor Metcalfe, and heading into the Asian Cup and beyond, we can see him as an intrinsic and a entrenched role, or an entrenched player in that Socceroos lineup. So let's move on to potentially the biggest story coming out of Australian football when it comes to a player moving abroad, or a player playing abroad, I should say, and that is, of course, Harry Souttar's move from Stoke to Leicester City in the Premier League. Now, this is, of course, the first time Socceroos players played in the Premier League since Aaron Moy and Matt Ryan both played at their respective clubs, and this is a massive move, not only for Harry Souttar, but for Australian football in general. This, of course, marks the third player, I think, at the time of speaking, third Socceroos player playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe, and this is by far the biggest high-profile name, I should say. But let's take a look at his debut in just a little moment. Let's speak on the transfer in more detail now. Of course, he was a player that was a massive stalwart for the Socceroos for the longest, for quite a while now. Kind of burst onto the scene as this dual nationality player that Australia poached very, very wisely, in fact, and his injury against Saudi Arabia that cost him 12 months of his career was very unfortunate, but he was able to rebound extremely strongly, and despite only playing 2 full 90 minutes, I think it was, before the World Cup, played an unbelievable World Cup, was arguably Australia's best player, and considering how well Australia played that tournament, that is quite something. In the grand scheme of things, he was unbelievable. We all remember that tackle against Tunisia, and we all remember his ability to just control the game, be so strong in defence, and not be fazed by anything. When we look at the games against France, which unfortunately he did concede for, but when you're up against the likes of Giroud and Mbappe and Griezmann, you kind of have to expect that at times as well. But the game that most impressed me was the Tunisia game, but also the Denmark game, because Australia were under the cosh for a lot of that game, and a player that was dealing with the likes of very, very physical and very, very physical strikers, but also very quick players who were making those third man runs. He had the ability to hold off very talented footballers and very physical footballers. Cornelius was one that gave the Socceroos a lot of problems, and Souttar went to him and kind of shut him out of the game, especially in that second half. And that really opened my eyes as to how good he was, and just how good a player he can be. We all knew that after the World Cup, his time at Stoke wasn't going to last. He obviously was destined to a move to a very, very good club in the upper echelons of Europeans' top 5 leagues, just because of how good he is and the potential he's got. He's still relatively young, especially for a centre-back, so he definitely has at least a full decade in his career at the top level left, in my opinion. He did get the move to Leicester City. That was a club that a lot of people expected him to go to, a club around about that mark where they do dominate possession in some games, but they are under the cosh and are defending kind of on their 18-yard box at times as well, and standing at 6 foot or standing at 8'3" or whatever he is. He's ridiculously tall, he's ridiculously physical, and he's just such a brute centre half. He can win every single aerial duel. He will dominate most strikers in terms of physicality wise, and we also, especially in that tackle tackle against Tunisia. He definitely has the recovery pace that not a lot of centre halves his size and his stature have. So he does have that multifaceted level when it comes to his defending side of things. But when we take a look at his more on ball style of play and the way that he can play when he has possession, he's definitely a more than capable user of the ball. Very, very technically gifted, especially for a centre back that isn't playing in the likes of Spain or Germany or these more technically or traditionally technically gifted nations. He's a player that can definitely take onus of a game, control tempo, and kind of be that first layer of attack for his side. We saw that he was able to do that for the Socceroos. He has been able to do that with Stoke for his period there, and hopefully he will be able to do that at Leicester for the time or for however long he's there for the foreseeable future. This is a massive moment when it comes to Socceroos players and the pathway the pathway I think is the right word to describe it. That it gives many young aspiring Socceroos players or young aspiring Australian footballers, because now they do have that idol that they can look to, that people maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago had the likes of Kuhl, Viduka, Neil, Cahill, Schwarzer, these players playing in the Premier League, playing at the highest level. Australia have lacked that for a long time, and having another player in the Premier League, the most watched league, barring the A-League probably in this country, it is a massive thing for Australian football. It is a massive thing for Australian football. Now, when we take a look at his debut, of course, it was kind of overshadowed by his very, very unfortunate own goal. Now, you can't really take a whole lot into that own goal considering the nature of it. It was hit directly at him. It wasn't a horrendous own goal. It was just a wicked deflection. So I think he was able to put that past him relatively quickly and rebound to play a very solid game after that. Let's take a look at some of the stats from his game. He had 45 touches, 33 passes, going at 82% accuracy. He had 7 clearances, 4 headed clearances, and 1 block. Now, this is just this will be a very similar stat line that you'll probably see from a lot of Harry Souttar's games. Obviously, the headed clearances is a massive avenue of his game and a massive way that he can influence games and repel a lot of danger. The 82% pass accuracy, once again, is something that is very good. Once again, that goes to show his ability to be a much more composed centre-half that maybe on face value a lot of people might think he isn't. He is very composed. He does have the ability to just hold things up, dictate tempo, and just be a really solid centre-back for Leicester, I feel. Now, yeah, like I said, the own goal was very unfortunate, but he was able to put that past him relatively quickly. Granted, he did concede 2 goals, and a clean sheet would have been nice on his debut, but his side did get all 3 points, a much-needed 3 points for Leicester. So hopefully he can be a player that can kind of rejuvenate their season and really have them kick on into the latter half of the season and make a run potentially for the top half of the table, because Leicester have been a side that has struggled especially this season and have been kind of it's been a very tumultuous time for them. So hopefully Shoots can come in, shore things up at the back, be a real rock, be a presence, be a leader in the dressing room, and can really kick on Leicester's season and potentially kick on his career from then. He will be a major part for the Socceroos, especially at the Asian Cup before the next decade, you'd think, because if he can do what he did at the World Cup when he was his first World Cup, coming off a 12-month injury, one of the worst injuries you can get as a professional footballer, and coming off only two or so, maybe 1.5 games of football prior after that injury heading into the tournament. Imagine what he can do when he's got a full season of playing at the top level under his belt, no injuries, full fitness, a very good Socceroos side, which we'd hope to think that we'd have come maybe 2, 3, 4 years time. He could really be anything. He could really be another player that in 20, 30 years time we're looking back at this generation of Socceroos and think, yeah, Harry Souttar was a very, very good player, one of the best to ever put on the green and gold. So yeah, that his debut wasn't the best, but it was still a pass mark for me, despite the own goal. His transfer is a very monumental moment in Australian football, the most expensive transfer for an Australian footballer in history. So yeah, there you go. That is, of course, the major storyline. The second major, or actually no, the major storyline coming out of the weekend was Harry Souttar's debut for Premier League side Leicester City. So yes, that is it. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Aussies Abroad. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure you leave any players you would like to see me cover in future episodes of this series in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel, like the video. See you guys next time, and goodbye.